inventory display, and so I took Dave Edwards up and showed him that fence, because it's in the green area, and it's visible enough you can see the cars, and he seemed to be fine with it, so.
Makes it look like, in some ways, like not only the future, but the past.
Yeah.
Instead of the 20th century, we just kind of paved everything,
Right.
which is horribly unattractive.
Now, the pedestrian lighting, is that something that will be potentially added with the redevelopment, or is that something that each business can choose to add? Because I know right now, if a new business goes in, don't they add that lighting at that time?
Currently, that's the process. So with redevelopment, they work with Iowa West and they offer to install the pedestrian lights. With this project, we're proposing to include it in the right-of-way and will be put consistently down the corridor so it's placed correctly and as part of the reconstruction.
Might as well do it all at once.
We are going to include bus stops with some sort of shelter. It's strategic locations, mostly on the downstream side of a key intersection. The artwork is not part of the bus stops at this point, but it has been identified as a potential place for art along the corridor. So if that comes to fruition, that's a likely place where art could be placed, is on the bus stops or incorporated into the bus stop.
That exact artwork.
It looked like Ronald McDonald.
Some people choose that as art. I'm not going to comment on those pictures.
Sweet.
Let's create discussion, give it that.
There's also a potential for special street signs, so we would include the logo and maybe make the signs unique along the corridor, so they would, again, just identifying this as a significant special corridor, it would stand out a little bit.
Well, part of it too is the graphic shows, will we continue? I know for the last several years, Public Works has worked on as the signs wear out, like, for example, that sign shows correctly West Broadway. Will we keep doing that? I noticed around town as the signs have worn out, we've started to insert, because we don't actually have a street called Broadway. We've got three. We've got a north, east, and a west. And I've noticed over the last several years, there's been that initiative to reinsert the correct name, especially in this day and age when so many people use GPS and it tells them to go on East Broadway and we don't mark it as that,
Right.
you know.
Well,
It's
all the
confusing.
signs will be new with this
Yeah.
reconstruction, so
Yeah.
especially if we brand them,
So I
they'll all be
encourage us to keep
replaced.
using the correct names for things.
So all these features that we talked about have been put into what we're calling the corridor master plan, which is a detailed, actually 3D model with all the under survey, existing features, and then we add in all the goals of the project with the desired streetscaping, street improvements, et cetera, and that's what you see represented there. Obviously, it's hard to see at this scale, but that is the basis of our project plans, and that was the starting point that we are actually making construction drawings at this point. And that continues east through the full corridor. So I'll talk about the typical cross-section here just a little bit, we've hinted at some of this stuff. So as you can see, there's always 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. When we did the traffic review, we did confirm that there is a need for a full 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, plus a center turn lane as needed. Excuse me. As you can see there is a proposed median with plantings where appropriate. Through feedback in the public meeting process, we heard that there was a pretty strong desire not to have trees in that median for a few reasons. One, people felt like they would be difficult to maintain and we'd be spending a lot of money to replace trees, that they would look out of place when you lose trees. There was also concern about people being to look across the trees and not see businesses, et cetera. So in response to those comments, the master plan does not include trees in the median, but it includes plantings. You can see there's ped lights and the decorative street lights. the brick road behind the curb, and then there'll be a continuous sidewalk on both sides as well. For reference, the existing right-of-way is 80 feet. The street is 60 feet. We will tear up 80 feet of land and put back 60 feet of pavement plus the streetscape. So we're going to tear up every bit of that 80 feet plus some probably.
So that was one of my questions I was going to have is what's the difference between the right-of-way as it currently exists and under this new plan? It doesn't look as though it's really changed.
Other than those corners where we need to make the improvements for
Okay.
accessibility and sidewalk and potentially some of the streetscape features. Today, some of those streetscape features that have been put in are actually on private property. To make it correct, since it's public space, it should be on right-of-way versus private property. Buc-ee's is a good example of that at 35th Street. They have a lot of decorative brickwork, et cetera, that was put in with partnership with Iowa West, but it's on Buc-ee's property. To correct that, we're showing that we would clip those corners and put that all on public property. But the 80-foot corridor will remain the 80-foot corridor. We will probably need some temporary easements, construction right of entries as we tie back driveways, tie in parking lots, et cetera. But the intent is it will remain 80 feet. Plus or minus. We're finding that there's places where it's 81, 82 when you actually go back to the survey plats. But in general, it's 80 feet. So we've talked before, but I'll review it one more time. The plan is to construct this in 5 phases, beginning on the west end at 36th Street, the West Gateway, and proceeding to the east. First phase goes to Arby's as a landmark. So that's about 2,000 feet. The intent is to complete construction in 1 year. We believe 2,000 feet is going to be extremely challenging to get that much done and maintain traffic. Obviously, if we shut it down, we've had a contractor already tell us they could do it in 90 days. But a business can't survive with a 90-day closure, so I don't think anyone would support a full closure for 90 days. It's a lot less disruption, but it's probably not realistic for this corridor. So we're still going under the assumption that we need to maintain two-way traffic throughout construction. Where possible, we're even going to incorporate a center turn lane, so 3 lanes of traffic, while building adjacent. So it's going to be a tight corridor. It's going to limit the availability of the contractor's land. You know, he's going to have to do some special things to keep that traffic going, but we understand that. That's the way we're approaching it just because of the feedback we received from the corridor. So we'll start in 2017 with construction. Goal is to finish by the end of 2017 with phase 1 and start phase 2 the spring of 2018 and continue approximately 2,000 feet each year until we get all the way done. So that's a representation of each one of those phases. 5 phases end up at the end of the viaduct just east of 16th Street. I'm going to skip a couple of these. Just this is a representation of a significant intersection, what it could look like, some sort of special paving treatment in the intersection. You can see special paving in the center turn lane, additional brick around the corners, the monuments, etc. If I'm able to pull it up, I have a better picture at the end of this I can show you. There's just a higher view of the same thing. You can see some plantings as you go further to the west there. A little bit different than what it looks like today, obviously. I wouldn't focus on colors or patterns, but the idea is to have some distinctive features that set this apart, obviously make it unique in the community. There won't be anything else like this.
Is there, what is, and if you don't know off the top of your head, I wouldn't blame you. What is the difference in the life expectancy between real brick and a stamp or some sort of other treatment that would look somewhat like it? Is that just, will that not hold up as well on an intersection that has 20,000 cars going over it a day? Just trying to think of the long-term advantages of one versus the other.
In the street
in the street, as opposed to where people are walking.
I'll
which
talk
I
about-
imagine that would be, I imagine
Right.
Stamp would probably last better where there's just the weight of people, but I don't know
Right.
that.
I'll talk about materials just a little bit. And
Oh,
again,
okay,
none of
sure.
these have
That's
been
fine. You-
decided, but
Sure.
again, the brick design that we've talked about behind the curb would be in the intersections as well, in the outside the intersections. That's worked pretty well, and we have it in place in several locations, and it's working. We're able to maintain it, and it's holding its profile, and there's no trip hazards, and the brick's holding up well. So we think we have that material figured out, the specific brick type, et cetera.
Okay. And when we look at the intersections, I'd encourage you to look, since I don't think we've done the actual, other than in downtown, which certainly we have. And some of that's the old brick that'll probably eventually need replaced, because it's some of the early generations of it that probably won't hold up as long as the newer. But I'd encourage you to look to some of the older neighborhoods where, like, the intersections where the brick is exposed, where they do the herringbone and the various patterns, kind of keep that historical look. I'd encourage you to maybe look to those patterns as to how they handled when intersections came together. It's really quite pretty. And it might tie in very nicely with the history of our community.
Yeah. Actually, what's proposed, which is similar maybe, in the center intersections, is an interlocking concrete block. It's a much thicker than a paver, and they hold up very well. There's some at 10th and Capitol in Omaha that have been in
Oh, yeah,
place for a
yeah.
long time, and they see quite a bit of traffic, both pedestrian and truck and bus and et cetera. Went and looked at those. They look really good. I'm not sure how many years they've been in there, but
That's by DJ's dugout, if
Yeah.
you need a point of reference.
they've been there a handful of years, and they still look just like they were installed. So we've got a few things we can look at,
That's a
past examples, and
That's a good idea, because even in the days of horses, in buggies, they used a thicker on the street, especially in intersections. You know, they used a 9-pound instead of a 3-pound brick, so, you know, like a trebling of the normal weight of, say, a residential street. So, yeah, looking to those examples and best practices is fantastic.
so we're looking at that. It looks unlikely that we'll do any type of paving block or brick in the center turn lane because it's so large. I mean, you're talking about 10,000 feet potentially, minus the median areas.
Sure.
So it's probably going to be some sort of pavement, either stamp or texture or finish type rather than an actual block or brick.
And I'm sorry to bother you again with the question, but I'll forget it if frankly. If in a lot of these landscape areas, are we landscaping them in such a way that so as much water as possible can stay and be used, as opposed to paying to irrigate it, and it having to go into the storm sewer? It's kind of the best practices, to the extent financially feasible, to retain that water.
In the first phase, you know, there's not a lot of
That's
green
true.
other than at 35th Street, and
Yeah.
then the rest will be on private property, so they would irrigate their own properties
Sure.
if they choose to do the improvement.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity when we put medians in where
Yeah.
we could do some stormwater features that collect the water off the street and
So
potentially
more we could
could.
save the free water, if you will.
Right.
Over time, I think it'd save money and it'd be a good environmental.
So we haven't got that far yet because
Sure.
we don't have that feature, but I think
Sure.
there's an opportunity there
Okay.
that we will look at for sure.
Thank you.
I'll touch on one other thing, which is the opportunity for driveway consolidation and removal of unsafe driveways. So again, through cooperation and coordination with property owners, if there's an opportunity where we can take 3 drives and turn it into 2 drives because they can share an access, we want to do that. That's a goal of the project. Again, it may not happen day one with the reconstruction. It may happen with redevelopment. We may be able to accomplish some with the reconstruction, and then additional ones will occur as redevelopment occurs. But that is a goal of the project. It helps with safety and moving traffic along the corridor, breaks up some of that concrete. So it's an overall good thing. But I don't know that we're in a position where we're going to force a property to say, you have to go through your neighbor's parking lot to get to yours. We're not to that point. But obviously, we'll have those conversations when we have the one-on-one conversations with the businesses, and we'll encourage that type of thinking.
Please definitely do that, because, you know, those were designed for the days of literally much smaller cars, both in speed and, horsepower and in size, to have all of those constant, especially left turns. Some of those even go back, or much of that street goes back to, its design goes back to horses. And so the idea is, we enter into faster cars, and in our lifetimes, ones that drive themselves, many of them, that you need so many turns because you can't wait another 15 feet to make a turn, so that we therefore increase the chance that some lady is going to get killed at that intersection because you can't wait 15 feet. I think we need to think a little bit smarter about it.
We'll also look at the ones that are very close to an intersection.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't
Those
meet,
are scary.
don't meet standards today.
They're very
If
scary.
there's an opportunity to eliminate those, we will. This slide just kind of shows you what can be done with private property landscaping. This is an existing business along the corridor where somebody did put in the ped lights and did do the 10-foot landscape buffer strip. So this is just something that when we talk to property owners, we can say, if you want to go look at an example, here's one at 25th Street at First National Bank. They did this as part of their new building construction. This is what it can look like. Obviously, it really does give a nice edge to the project. You get that green, and you get a little bit of vertical with trees and the ped lights, just so it's not such a flat gray corridor. I'll kind of try to rush through the rest of these to save time. Environmental, there's a lot of old gas stations, dry cleaners along the corridor. All those orange and yellow dots are underground plumes from that contamination that we will have challenges with as we build this project. Gets pretty ugly as you get down to this area. The whole thing is orange and yellow. So our plan is to have kind of steps in place for what will happen if we do encounter it. Hopefully we can keep most of our construction shallow enough that we don't have to get into it. Maybe if we're only in the first 5 feet down or something, we're not into the deep contamination. Fortunately, there's limited sanitary sewer in West Broadway, which is normally where we get into deep excavations, so we may get lucky in that regard. Also, groundwater conditions. Every time we build in this community, we struggle with groundwater. Even in phase one, it looks like we're going to be right on that edge of where the water is today. It's hard to know where it's going to be in the spring when we start construction, but it's something we're already thinking about and how we're going to deal with that should we encounter it for phase one. Traffic recommendations, I talked about that already. We're looking at a little bit of lane configuration changes for 16th and 35th just to help move the number of vehicles that go through there. 16th and West Broadway is the busiest intersection on the corridor. A lot of vehicles through there. So anything we can do to make that more safe and improve traffic flow, we're going to try to do as part of the reconstruction. And I talked about construction phasing already. The only thing I'll highlight on this one is we are going to attempt to move some of the vehicles off the corridor during construction, give them an alternate location. A lot of people won't do that, but we will use Avenue A for westbound and 2nd Avenue for eastbound, so there will be, if people choose, they are traveling and for long distances and don't have a destination within the current phase of construction, they can go around it by going to either north to Avenue A or south to 2nd Avenue. And I alluded to it a little bit. We've done some things with this project much larger scale than we normally would, obviously because of the scale of this project. We have a unique Facebook page for this project. We have a unique website for this project. We've done direct mailings. What's the number? It's a big number. 1,100, 1,400, something like that. 1,149 postcards sent just to people affected directly along the corridor. So we're certainly making a huge effort to reach out to the public and to the business owners and managers along that corridor. We continue to do so, and things like this are part of that process where we're going to have public meetings, we're going to have one-on-one meetings, and anytime we can get input, we're going to try to take that input and incorporate it in the project as best we can. We know it's going to be challenging, so we want to be partners with the businesses along the corridor so that they understand the challenges we have. We understand the challenges they have in running a business, and hopefully we'll find solutions that work for both of us. So that is it for the master plan. Any questions about this document or anything else on the corridor?
Just that, I think that as this goes, some of those alleys that sit behind those businesses are probably gonna get a lot of use during this construction, because there's gonna be times where it's gonna be very difficult, if not impossible, to get to them from the front. And some of those alleys are in, really bad condition. Is there a potential that we can at least go in and get some gravel down and level them a little bit, so that that we'll be able to access those businesses without taking out a axle on our car?
There has been that discussion. We're also thinking that likely we will sign them one direction, one way, because there's not good places to turn around. And if two cars meet, a lot of them aren't much wider than 12, 14 feet wide. There's just not physical room for two vehicles to meet in the middle. So once we develop those final phasing plans, we'll incorporate potentially some re-signing of those alleys temporarily. We have to keep in mind some of the, particularly the fast food and their drive-throughs, use the alley as part of their access and part of the way their drive-through works. So they actually have to use that alley. So we have to keep that in mind as we do that as well. That's just another one of those fun challenges as part of this project. But yes, we've thought about that. We haven't done it yet, but obviously
Right, well, it'd be
we're
nice.
thinking about that.
Sure you thought of it, but if you're gonna do that with one way in the alley, you need to, on the north side, go east, since Avenue A goes west, and
Right.
allows people to circulate a little better.
Right.
Yes, because it'd be really difficult.
Yeah.
And it will depend on what phase of construction we're in potentially.
Yeah.
When we're working on the north side and the north side shut down, it may look different than when we're working on the south side and the south side shut down.
On the south side, for the most part, there's really just not going to be an alley as much as there's going to be First Street that's not open, so it's mostly on the north that we have the alley, right?
And unfortunately, on the north is where most businesses are landlocked and don't have any.
Correct.
There's locations where there's no private, or they're all surrounded by private property. There's no public property to get to them alternately. So we have some, Popeyes is a good example that we use a lot, because they're surrounded by privately owned property. They have a drive-through. It's very close to the intersection. There's just a lot of challenges with that particular property. So
I can imagine.
The nice thing about doing it now rather than waiting is as many practical or political difficulties will be of doing it now. Can you imagine if we wait 50 or 100 years? It'll only get worse, and then we'll give up that opportunity to increase the vitality of that area, which will cause more people to be there. It'll raise more tax money that we would forfeit if we didn't do it now. So
and obviously
we've got to do it.
we're thinking about all those things. So we don't ever want to do this again. We're going to
Not
design
in our
it
lifetimes anyway.
as a perpetual pavement so that there's an ability to maintain this for the future without full reconstruction, that we can potentially look at just resurfacing, things like that, because this is a project we do not want to do anytime
Well,
soon.
Well, just even having a way to convey the water away from the street, real storm sewers that actually connect to something, which our town's never had on that street. And it's way past due. I think most people, when they find out that this is going to make it less likely that your car will flood and that you'll be able to actually get places, I mean, and all these other things, some people have said, including to me, I imagine my colleagues have added as well, where they'll talk about, well, why do you need all these extra things? Well, if you're already in there doing the necessary things, why not do the other enhanced things? To the extent there's funding, especially to the extent we can get third-party funding from outside of tax money, especially local property tax money, why not do it? Well, the street's literally open and it can be done. Then I think people realize we're not closing the street just to install pretty brick. While we're there doing it, we might as well make it look nice, especially if someone else will foot the bill. And so I think once that's, I think there's an important critical piece of the public understanding what we're doing, why it's necessary, and the media, whether traditional or social media, has a great part to play in that. But I think people are more supportive once they understand why, like with most things. And so you're doing a good job of that, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to do our part as well.
Well, I know that with the social media that's out there, are we going to be able to keep that constantly updated as things are changing? I know that, the DOT did the one with HDR for the interstate, which has been great because you can set it up to alert you if there's been a change in your traffic pattern. Are we going to be able to have the ability to have that kept constantly current so that we can avoid some of the phone calls that we would normally get? And who's going to be the direct contact for upset business owners? Because, I mean, that's going to be the main thing.
We're
is
looking for
that people-
volunteers for that right now.
It's funny, but you're right.
No, I mean, for the most part, people, they need to be heard. And generally, if they can at least get a phone call through to the person that can do something for them, it doesn't get people as aggravated as being, well, why don't you try calling this department, or I can't help you, that's not my department. I mean, we're going to have very clear key contacts and things like that for those
Got a
people.
pretty good idea who that'll be.
You going to put his cell phone number on the website? Just kidding.
And all phone calls that come into City Hall come through my phone. Not all phone calls, but all people who don't know who they're calling come through my phone. That is the main switchboard number.
That's something maybe in the future we
But I
ought to
think
look
that-
at alleviating that.
I think that several
Frankly.
times a day.
I imagine, but that doesn't seem frankly a good use of your time
Yeah.
to be
And-
the operator for the
But
building.
that helps with Sharon's question, though. If we had an actual number, I
Right.
mean, like, is it going to be you? Is it going to be someone else? Like, if we could, instead of just saying, just call the number, we could say, call this number, and then they would go right to.
Right,
That
I
would help
wanted to
take some-
go,
yeah.
because otherwise Matt's just going to have to say, look, I'm going to have to look into that for you.
Right. Is there someone that?
You
not a
know,
good
and
use
that's
of
going to
his
slow
time.
them up because you're not going to know the answer on every one of those. I mean, there's going to be unique things. So,
Right.
and
So we're working on some things right now. Obviously, we have point of contacts, which is the consultant team, and Michelle,
Okay.
as communication officer, is also in the point of contact on the website. As we transition to construction, I think that'll change, and we'll probably have multiple options. So, for instance, if you have a problem with your water service connection, call this number.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with access to your business, call this number. And we'll have those lined out
Perfect.
based on as many as we can think of. We probably won't hit every potential problem that's going to come up, but
I just know that communication that has been done on the interstate project has really gone a long way towards keeping people from getting so upset because they know what's coming. They get they get real-time updates as things are happening, if it's going to change their commute pattern. And I just think it'd be really helpful if we stay way ahead of that. It will help to keep anger at bay.
Is there a possibility, particularly at, let's say, the three main intersections, to at least run the conduit, if not the actual lines, for what you sometimes see, particularly in larger cities, the smaller, kind of like the municipal equivalent of the interstate boards, obviously much different in size, but the idea of the signs, particularly. Eventually, they could show things like with the traffic patterns of the lights, like if there's a big event or there's a snowstorm and this street closes or this street has a significant delay, it could say that. The idea of things that maybe haven't been created yet, but at least, and many of those have, and imagine what hasn't. The idea of having the ability to retrofit them because there's already a conduit or a system to pull those wires would be great.
Well-
As part of a plan, I realize we're not talking about money today to do.
so I don't know what those solutions will look like, but
Okay.
what I would guess is that we intend to replace the fiber network that's already in the corridor through a series of events that will be a city-owned only fiber network.
Sure.
Today it's shared with another utility and the DOT, but because of their relocations, et cetera, and the transfer of jurisdiction, it's going to become city-only fiber. With that infrastructure in place, I would think any of those type of things would be possible with
'Cause that would be
the
nice.
purchase of the equipment. So the
Sure.
fiber will be there.
Okay.
That will allow the communication and all kind of.
So we could retrofit, because someday, it'd be nice to know, like, for example, if there is, goodness forbid, but, there's fire, some reason there's a major accident that's tying up this street, you would know about it without having to place the temporary giant signs everywhere. It could already be there. That might free up some labor with Public Works.
Right.
as well, you could sign accordingly.
The other thing we're doing is, as you're aware, we're looking at adaptive signal control on Canesville, and we're starting that project very soon. We're not going to install it as part of this project, but we're going to have it basically install ready should we find that that's successful in Canesville and we want to invest in additional controllers. The traffic signal operation we put in place as this project will be ready for that upgrade. So that's another way that we can control future traffic flows with
That's-
accidents, et cetera.
That's fantastic, because someday I can envision, like, you don't see many places yet, though I think you'll see more. When you're coming down, you'll actually see time estimates. You know, once you enter Council Bluffs at 35th, it could tell you what the flow of traffic is. Like, for example, it's 8 minutes expected to reach whatever we demarcate lines, like say around the hospitals. Like whatever, if we were to call it something, it would allow for these things where people could have more information in real time. That people then would naturally shift if one way is significantly longer than the other, they're going to shift, thereby making your life easier and everyone's. But having the capability of having it so that those things can be installed later as funding comes available is great for forward planning.
I
So
think,
I'd encourage it.
as I've stated many times, this is a project we do not want to reconstruct.
Sure, absolutely.
We're trying to think of everything we can, and we're welcoming those ideas. What can we put in place today to serve us for the future?
And
So
to that
that's-
end, the waterworks,
I'm sorry?
and to that end, the waterworks, and what are they gonna do?
Oh, yeah.
They are replacing their water main. It's a 1890 something water main,
Cast.
which is a significant cost to them. The challenge with waterworks is in their normal business plan, the water service on a commercial property is the property owner's responsibility all the way to the main. So we potentially have a water main that'll be new with an old water service coming to it that would be under our pavement. We're in discussions about, doesn't it make sense to go ahead and bite the bullet and replace that service, even at the cost of the city or the utility, not the property owner, because obviously they didn't cause the reconstruction. But,
No.
I mean, that's something we do with sanitary sewers as common practice. We replace it to the right of way, or at least behind the curb, so that if anything were to happen to it, it's not tearing up the street. Waterworks has
In
a
the end,
different
that
vision,
saves
so-
far more money than just making it, well, gosh, are you going to incur this unexpected
We
major
think so
expense?
too, but they don't necessarily think so. They
Right.
think if they have to tear up the brick sidewalk, it's gonna be more expensive than tearing up the street, so.
Through a lot of painful
wish they were
coordination,
right.
their currently plan is to go on the north side of the street,
Yeah.
Behind the curb.
Well, that
so-
makes a lot more sense than the.
All the
center.
north side services will not be in the street, but those long services that go to the south side, obviously will be the full length of the street. There is an opportunity that those could be dry bored, so you could dig a hole on the north side, push it under the street, and not actually tear up the street. My vision for the corridor is that in the future, I may ask this council to approve a special resolution regarding street patching in Broadway. And there's not going to be any more of these half patches and small things that utilities wanted to go up and tear up and put back. We're gonna require a much larger, significant patch so that our pavement condition stays good, or we do it and charge them back.
You can look to the model of the prior administration, which the present administration has continued, and I'm grateful, very grateful for with the residential neighborhoods with the exposed brick. Have a similar type policy about how it's not, in that case, it's not, for folks who don't know, it's not going through and removing the generally very shoddily done patching over brick with asphalt or whatever, but it's to the extent, including the waterworks, if they go in and remove anything, they have to put it back to the standards. So in that case, they literally have to have someone come and reset all the layers of brick, and which isn't very popular, as you can imagine, with them, but a lot safer, and they seem to be more strategic, I've noticed, with when they dig something up and when they replace things. It's changed the incentive to, let's just do as little as we can right now, and then the city taxpayer incurs the expense to, well, gosh, if we've got this open, maybe we ought to get rid of this main that's 140 years old next to it and do this now, because we're going to have to pay to fix it right, so the city taxpayer doesn't get stuck with it. That might be a model to, you give them, it's a free market incentive. Yeah, if you want to do it this way, you're going to be paying a heck of a lot more money later. What do you want to do?
Right.
It's not subsidized, substandard.
We've had a much more in-depth utility coordination on this project. We meet actually weekly with all the franchise utilities to discuss this project. And I would say, for the most part, they're all coming along very well. They understand that this is not the typical CIP project, that this is different. They're spending significant dollars to relocate their facilities. And in fact, I would guess you'll start to see some of those very soon this fall, as they want to be out of the way before we even get there.
Sure.
Some of those include just boring a new line significantly deep under all our new projected facilities. So whether they go 15, 17 feet in the ground just to get underneath us and out of the way, they're doing
But would that be like the electricity or the,
So that's Cox, CenturyLink, Mid-American Energy, Black Hills Energy.
so that they would not have interruptions then once they do that during the project?
That's the goal, yes.
And I have, this will show my ignorance on the topic, but has technology reached a point where it's commercially feasible that we actually do put utilities that they can actually, like it's oil prospect, they can actually drill horizontally and they can do that?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Now, what the drillers tell us and what we actually see in the field is not always the same, but
Fair enough.
they can hit it pretty close, and
Okay.
that is their intent. Specifically for Cox and CenturyLink, Mid-American Energy, they're all going deep underneath.
That makes sense.
The intersection of 35th is a big one. That seems to be a hub for all the utilities.
I bet.
One last thing, I just put this picture up on the screen. This is where we're trending with the design. It's a little bit further refined than what was in this master plan. We call this the donut shape. Rather than putting a decorative brick or a block in the center, we're talking about doing the crosswalk area and then having a different type of special paving in the inside circle. So,
And the intent is to lower the maintenance cost, the installation costs?
it does a couple things. There's a little bit closer view. It provides a good place for pavement transitions. That's
Okay.
one of the reasons I like it, because it's a nice ending point versus a strange shape in the middle that has some that goes around it, some that goes into it. It's much more difficult to pave against those type of surfaces, which then affects, every time you pick up that paver, that affects the ride of the street.
Yeah.
Look to
So
Park Avenue for that one.
for me, I like a nice firm joint we can pave to. That keeps the ride of the street
Okay.
improved. What was your second question about maintenance?
I was going to go back to your point. I just want to make sure I understood your point about discussions with the waterworks about the lines coming out from the main to the individual businesses. If I understood your comment correctly, you're in discussion with the waterworks, but you're not all the way where you'd like to be with that issue.
Right. Well, just for typical process with the waterworks, they start their water line design at 60% of our street design as part of a joint project. We are at that point right now. So they're literally starting their design of the water relocation.
Okay.
So my hope is as they further that process, that will continue and that will come to some resolution of what their plan is to include those services or not.
Okay.
They operate independently, they
Yeah.
have a budget, they want to do it the most economical way possible. That doesn't work for us, we don't think.
Well,
The
yeah.
other way might not be economical then. That's the way to maybe.
Yeah, and I agree with with that perspective, and I think that many of the business owners would share that concern. You know, it seems like that if we're going to deal with this now and make it a something that functions well for the long term, that's something that you want to take care of now. And I didn't know about possible ways that we could incentivize the waterworks
You
thinking
just,
process.
all you have
on
to do
that.
is look at that 100 block. We redid it all, and within a month, a new building gets reconstructed, remodeled, and they go out and hook up in the middle of the street and tear a big panel out of the street.
Yep.
It happened probably 7 or 8 times just in that 100 block. So
Matt, if you're thinking about bringing this resolution about the replacement of larger panels when they do have to dig up the street, would it be better to bring that now so that the water company and other companies can look and say, wow, that's going to help us make our decision on what we want to
Exactly.
do with this? I mean, I'd rather go ahead before people start getting their design in place and they're making their budget decisions based on what our policies are today. I'd rather go ahead and bring that now so that it'll help them make their decisions as to what is more expensive, tearing up the sidewalk or tearing up the street.
Sure, we can look at that. I've basically been presenting it that way to the utilities anyway, is that this is not going to, you're not going to be allowed to come out here and just hack it all up like sometimes happens today.
Yeah.
So without a policy in place, I didn't give them any firm direction, but I said it's going to be something greater than what you've seen in the past.
I think we
But,
should probably go ahead and start getting that in place. I think it'll help people to make, in their decision-making process on how they want to proceed with their design.
I think it would help reassure the business owners along there also. I think it's very good for them as well. So,
One last thing, and unless you have other questions, I wanted to mention is, obviously, we're concerned about time. This is a significant project to get done in 1 year. With all the features behind the curb, just makes it that much more difficult. We strongly believe that an incentive, disincentive contract be used, so there would be some benefit to the contractor in finishing early. Obviously,
Absolutely.
a penalty if he doesn't finish on time. Through feedback, we've actually met with several contractors, discussed the project, make sure we're not putting anything together that's not buildable, make sure that they're not seeing any huge red flags. We're getting good positive feedback based on the design we have so far, but it sounds like that, $5,000 a day type numbers are what gets their attention. So we would have potentially even within each phase of the construction, an incentive built into the contract with a maximum. Obviously, we don't want it to get out of control, but we would know that when we award this project that potentially we may have $100,000, let's say, that could be paid to the contractor if he finishes early on every phase. And I think that's a good sign of faith to the businesses. I think it's good for us to give us reassurance that they're going to stay focused and on the corridor. This is the type of project we can't afford a contractor to go away for a week because he's got other work somewhere else.
Right.
So to keep him motivated and on the job, that's something we're going to, at least I'm going to push for, and that's going to be part of the contract documents that eventually come before you. So
Well, yeah, harness the power of the market and get people incentive to get it done, and time's money. So absolutely.
I'm very much in favor of it. I mean, we watched what happened with the rebuilding of the Interstate North after the flood, and boy, I'll tell you what, that incentive got it done quick.
Boy, it can be done.
So I'm very much in favor of that incentive, but I also want to know, at the same time, then will the penalties for being late be higher as a further incentive, or is that?
higher than the incentive?
Well, no, well, what I'm saying is, I know you always get penalized if you're late, so, but I don't know if you penalize per day. I don't know what the norm is for that.
Typically, we do it by day.
Okay, and so will the penalty for getting it done late, for getting it done early be enough to offset being late? So I guess my question is, I just want to make sure they're saying, well, you know what, for us, it's cheaper to just go ahead and pay the penalty for being late than to get the money for being early. I just want to make sure that those numbers are set to be very much an incentive to get it done early.
Aren't they usually commensurate?
I don't know if they are.
I've noticed the penalty seems to be about, at least, well, I guess have we done incentives? I'm not sure.
I don't know, yeah.
I don't know if we have.
Not a true incentive contract. We've done A+B bidding, which allows them to set the number of
Oh, yeah,
days,
yeah.
and there's daily road user costs, and based on that, which is a calculation of traffic numbers and distance out of travel.
I see.
There's multiple ways to do alternative contract methods. We're looking at all of them, but it looks like an incentive type program, whether it's a lump sum or by a certain date, the thing with this project is we don't have any Labor Day parade or whatever that we need to be open by.
Right.
We just want to make sure that we've got it done before the significant winter weather, and we get this thing back open to traffic.
Well, if you get X for every day you're early, you should at least pay X if for every day late. I would think that seems fair. I don't know if a number higher than the incentive, that might be too far the other way. But it ought to be the same number, it seems to me.
It's a tough thing, and we'll have to research, the Iowa law, but
Sure.
you usually have to justify a penalty or a disincentive, so
I bet the businesses would give you a lot of factual
Right.
ammunition. I know you do, not to
Right,
make
so-
light of it, but I think we probably could make our factual case.
right. If we say that in some form or manner, the businesses lost this much money, they intend to ask the city to repay that much money, then it becomes our liability potentially. But all things we're going to look at when we're developing that contract document. I just wanted to bring that up, that
I like it.
I think it's a good idea, and we certainly want to
Well,
pursue
that
those
if you
type
live
of
on it, I mean.
programs to help the contractors get this done.
You would see my support for.
Yeah,
incentives.
push the envelope on the incentives and disincentives. Why not? You give them a goal to shoot for. They almost always meet it. Why not?
Absolutely. My main concern with all this is the businesses. Even with keeping their entrances open, I know as well as any other business owner, if it's hard to get there, it's still open. It's still going to affect your business. So maybe we get creative with some way to help these businesses a little bit during that construction in their phase, as well as just being fiscally responsible with some of these extra amenities. I understand. I talked with Nate a little bit before about it. I understand we're tearing it up. We can put some nice things in there, but if these bids come in real high, looking at, in my opinion, some of this brick, it just is a maintenance nightmare. I know you said you've got some ways that are going well with other brick in the area, but I just want to make sure we're looking at those things when those bids come in. And I'm personally not a big fan of a median in Broadway at all. I know you have reasons for that, but
Greg's giggling to himself.
that's just not.
Though it is a concession to get rid of the trees. I really did want trees. And there are good,
See, and I think
there
that-
were a sizable number of people who did. Now, I'd say a majority didn't, to be fair.
Yeah, I think you can't see businesses, and I mean I don't like the median, in personal opinion. Again, on Harry Langdon, I think if you can't see the oncoming traffic, it
Well,
really.
There's no reason to see the oncoming traffic because there's nowhere on Harry Langdon you're taking a left or a right, really, where there's the medians.
Well, that,
Right.
and I
I just-
asked in the,
Safety thing there.
I think it's safer to be able to see it personally.
I asked about Harry Langdon in a different context, and if I misquote Larry, please correct me, but that was one of our first examples of one of those. And to the extent we would ever have funding available, it's probably getting tired. I think that's the word to use. And certainly there are a lot of things about it that are less than ideal, even as it was designed then. So about that one. But no, I take your point. I think it is a significant concession to remove trees. I think people sometimes get scared, legitimately, by feeling like they're closed in. But having something to break up, there's no, the entire 2 point, how many miles it is, 2 point something miles it is of west of the viaduct. There's no legal need to make a left turn at every square inch. In fact, it's illegal many times to make a left turn in much of that. And so for some of that, we could break up to the extent it makes sense.
Right.
We're not going to boulevard the whole thing. That wouldn't make sense.
Right.
But to the extent we can do it in spots, I think you're right. I think your concern's very valid. We have to balance the need for aesthetics with practicality, and you raise a very good point.
Absolutely, and
I think
do
we need to
see-
keep that in mind the whole time.
for sure. And I do see a lot of trees along in that streetscape, and I don't know if that's only up to the business or if those will be on any sort of public land.
On public property, it is proposed that we would put them in some larger parcels we own that are set for redevelopment. We believe that just makes it more attractive and shows them what it could look like for their frontage. Again, almost all of these are dependent on a funding partner. So if for some reason the funding partner decided they weren't interested in funding these specific items, they probably are not going to be in the project.
Right.
Frankly, the brickwork, when it got bad looking, I requested stamped concrete. Iowa West said, we won't pay for stamped concrete, we'll pay for brick. We said, we like brick. And that'll be the case here. You know, we're not
Right.
gonna pay for it.
And that, the ongoing maintenance for those planters or the medians, is that something we're looking into third-party funding as well?
I would doubt it.
They've said
Indications are they
want
will
to get
not
away from taking on those
Will take on the
long-term
maintenance.
maintenance responsibilities, so.
I think one of the
probably
keys will be better defining what vegetation goes in there. And that's what happened, I
Yeah.
believe, at Harry Langdon, is we gave them a broad scope of acceptable plants, and they chose the least expensive planting rather than wanting to show off what their business could do. They just wanted to fulfill the contract. And so I think we need to narrow down plants that won't grow and get out of
And
control.
And sticking to those ones that are, to the extent possible, drought resistant, I have great faith in our Parks and Rec about their expertise of what sort of plant or tree makes sense here versus how many feet back. You know, having a diversification so they're not all ash, for example, you know, or the next ash tree, whatever that will be, because, you know, it won't be the last tree to be diseased. But having that specialization and using that talent we've got on staff to inform it is so important. And I know we've got that talent.
Matt, any trees that the city would put on property the city owns in order to do that 10-foot buffer, it would be back of sidewalk anyway.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make clear that there wouldn't, because there were some concerns, the people were worried about trees being dangerous, because when I was at the public meetings,
Sure.
and because they didn't realize, oh, no, those aren't going to be right up on.
We're not planting walnuts in the street. Yeah, please no. Maybe back.
One of the reasons we want to put those plantings in is that we're designing the layout so that they fit properly with the lighting, with all the other features. So by us putting them in, we control that. We control what it looks like. Potentially, we can share those layouts with future private businesses that want to do the same thing, and that way it all fits properly and fits the ultimate vision of the corridor. And I just wanted to comment, Roger, as far as the businesses, I agree with maybe doing some special things. I've already thought maybe we're going to put some kind of signage in the contract that says, we'll use Popeye's example again. Popeye's is open, turn here, those type of things. That's normally not in our project. I hope that they will also be creative and say, you know, excuse our dust, we're offering 10% off during whatever. You know, there's ways that during construction they can advertise and use all the discussion on the construction project to bring business to their particular business as well, just by because it's being discussed. So that's a way for them to encourage participants to come to them as well.
And surprisingly, during the stakeholders meetings, somebody from Grease Monkey was there, and it's somebody, you know, that's a company I actually feel really sorry for, because they've been impacted repeatedly over and over and over by construction. And he was really clear that it, you know, didn't have that big of an impact on his business. People will get there. It's inconvenient, it's a pain, but they understood, and I'm very supportive of the project, and
Oh, I think everybody will be supportive. It's just a matter of, you know, if they have concerns, and again, I know we'll be getting the calls, so.
yes, you're right.
Well, and to that end, when you talked about who to know to talk to, you guys need to know who to talk
Right.
to so that you can get, one, you don't look like you don't know what's going on, and two, that you can get back to them in a timely,
Right.
because nothing's worse than somebody with a question and you get back to them 2 weeks later.
Yeah, being able to give them the right answer back
Yeah.
would be, yeah.
Any other questions for Matt? What's your expectation? You talked about getting it out on Facebook or something. Would you expect they would get back to you in the next few days with questions, or?
On this
Yeah.
corridor master plan specific, well,
Yeah.
you all should have it. If you want a paper copy, I can get that made and printed for you, at least 11 by 17 this size. If you have any trouble with the download, let me know. But feel free to comment anytime between now and the next council meeting, and we'll try to incorporate any of those comments.
If you're gonna put something on the next council meeting, then, as Al said, that doesn't give you any chance to get it on for the public to see it, so.
And then, well, yeah, once we put it on the agenda, we'll have a copy at the clerk's office.
Yeah, I'd like to have it as widely available as possible. I think that will generate more support and enthusiasm about the project because, there's a lot of misconceptions about the difference between what was originally put out there as the plan and what we're seeing now. And there's been, as you pointed out, there's been a number of changes that reflect impact, input that you got from the public, and some of the things that they were squawking about have come out. So good on you for being responsive. At the same time, Roger made a good point about the brickwork, and you followed up on that a little bit, Mr. Mayor. That when people see or hear that we're going to be incorporating more brickwork into this, they're going to be thinking of some of the old projects that have not held up well, and there may not be as much of a public understanding about those changes or those remedies that you guys have found to that to create a better product. So, this kind of goes into all of, being able to share this with the public to kind of help allay those concerns and get out ahead of what may be some misconceptions.
We did, I'm going to say round numbers, 120 comments related to the public meeting. We did respond to every one of those. Some of them were exactly what you said. Your brick you have today doesn't hold up. It looks horrible. Why would you put more in? So we explained how this is different, how we're doing things in a different way that we expect to perform much better. But for future comments, I'm open to ideas on how we respond to those. If you tell me you want this out on the website tomorrow, we'll put it on the website tomorrow. I just was hesitant to do it until you guys blessed it.
No, I think
It's up to you
I think
guys.
you were right the way you did it, and I consent to you doing it. Speaking for myself.
I'm fine with it
Yeah, I'm
going
fine
up
with
on the
it.
I'm
website.
glad we got it first, but for sure,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would put it up.
That's the right procedure, but yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
On the website or on Facebook, it would really be nice if we could have a frequently asked questions. If we can have an FAQ, the brick answer's going to be there.
Yeah, we have one on the website. It's probably not that extensive yet, so we can look at expanding it.
Well, and if there's a way to give them information on questions you get, so that's a great learning tool, I think, so that they've heard the answer to the questions you've received when somebody comes to them and asks a
Right.
question.
And maybe I missed it. I'm on Facebook every day. Maybe I haven't even seen the Facebook page. I don't know if that's Michelle didn't put it out, or we weren't informed, or I don't know. But I can tell you, I haven't even.
I to be honest, I didn't know about it.
Maybe tag us so more people see it. Because if I don't even know it's there, I can't see it, and then none of my friends, if you don't tag me, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'll just tell you, didn't even know this was out on Facebook. So that's a big concern as well for people to even see it. I don't know.
Maybe
if
Michelle,
we've
yeah, I
had
just
a
looked
lot.
just now and I see it now, but
Certainly
I had liked
And-
it, but
and I
maybe
could have
Michelle
missed it,
could.
so
I think
maybe,
Michelle
yeah.
shared it, but maybe we have her share it again.
They were doing
Okay.
Yeah, everybody invite people to it. You can have her.
Everything we put out to the public includes that on there, but again, the more we can reach out to people.
Absolutely.
We're trying to drive people to the website because that's where all the information is, but those instant communications through the Facebook takes people to the website from Facebook.
Even just on the city Facebook, put in the website and tag us. You know what I mean? You can reach 50,000 people in 20 minutes. That's just how I see getting more people to know about this.
Okay, we'll take that input.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, the next item is the Bartlett Rail Agreement.
Okay, so as you know, the interstate's progressing and the railroad consolidation, believe it or not, is getting close to being completed. So there's significant portions of the rail consolidation already built. In particular, we now have tracks down by the tank farm. As you recall, the whole idea of the rail consolidation is to eliminate the track that goes to the power plant behind Lewis Central, to eliminate the tracks along the South Expressway that's blocking the power center, and eliminate the tracks downtown along Main Street and 11th Avenue. So it appears that probably in spring of 17, all the rail consolidation work will be completed. And as you recall, the reason how we go about eliminate these tracks is there's a set of tracks built right along the interstate past the tank farm. The ones in green are the Burlington Northern, so the Burlington Northern can take the Baird line past Mall the Bluffs, or they can go to the UP yard without having to go all the way up past the power center and then into the UP yard, or in the case if they want to go to Baird, they actually have to go into the UP yard, back out, and then travel out to the Mall of Bluff. So this Y down here will provide a lot of convenience for the BN that eliminates tracks throughout the city. So impacted by the rail consolidation is the Bartlett grain elevator. So you're looking at an aerial photo of Bartlett, the South Expressway here going north. Here's the elevator. This is actually, I think, a shadow of the elevator in the picture. The elevator owns the ground here in brown, and the gray is owned currently by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. And as part of the rail consolidation, the city will be the new owners of that corridor and this corridor. Currently, you can see there's three tracks on the brown. Those are owned and they're on property owned by Bartlett. There's a track number 4, owned by Bartlett. It's on BN property. The 5th track is owned by the Burlington Northern, and it's leased to Bartlett. So tracks 4 and 5 are leased to Bartlett. The city will be inheriting that lease. We are required to allow Bartlett to operate on tracks 4 and 5 as long as they remain an elevator. That's part of the transfer. So what Bartlett is requested is permission from the city to use tracks 6, 7, and 8. So the South Expressway is over here. So you can see the 3 tracks they own here go into their elevator. Track 4 is the one they own on BN property that's going to get leased. Here's track 5, owned by the BN, but it's going to be leased to Bartlett. Actually, I'm off here. Here's 4 and here's 5. So Bartlett has expressed an interest in entering into a lease agreement with the City Council Bluffs. Likely, the city will take ownership of this ground, possibly yet this year, but it could spill over into early 2017.
Are we have they suggested terms as to how long or how much?
Well, they're obviously currently they make no use of these tracks. These tracks.
I didn't think I saw anything ever on that. At
These
least
tracks are owned by the BN, and the BN likes to park trains on there that are waiting to go somewhere. So it really isn't grain traffic. But the reason Bartlett's interested in these 3 tracks is they've lost some of their length. To the south here, where it crosses 29th Avenue, remember, that's where the tracks have been cut off. So they've lost the ability to store cars, enough cars that they can build a 110-car train.
I guess I'd like to know more about the length of term they're looking for and how much they're willing to pay. If expressing interest, I hate to bid against ourselves.
Well, what I would
Locked
ask the
in.
council, if you have an interest in allowing Dick and I to try and negotiate some terms with the Bartlett folks, then we can proceed to do that. They're very, very interested in as long a term of lease as they can get on track 6, and they could
More.
live with shorter term leases on tracks 7 and 8. My thought is at some point, when we redo South Expressway, potentially we may need additional land. But since we haven't got it designed, we don't know how much we need. But certainly, if we just put it back the way it is, a trail could go, along here if we eliminate at least 1, if not 2 tracks. So, my thought is, and we've told them if we are going to do a lease, it'd probably be for a very short term because we don't know when our need for this property will arise. They suggested, well, again, maybe a little longer term lease on this track and a shorter term lease on those tracks. So,
When over the long term, probably the highest and best use, and I'll particularly defer to Sharon on this, certainly outside my expertise, to say the least. I would think that area of over time of not having train traffic and having more, I imagine commercial, but I don't know, is probably more advantageous to the South Expressway than encouraging greater use of trains.
I don't know. I don't know how much width is there, how much depth is there, and whether or not we want a bunch of curb cuts on the South Expressway. Since it's an expressway, you'd have to put in a frontage road to make that. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head. I think, well, with expressways, you don't want a whole bunch of turnoffs on it. You want to get through it. So, and like I said, I don't know how much depth is there. I'd like to know what they'd be willing to pay for it, but I also don't want a bunch of junk sitting on those tracks 24/7 because it's, this was an opportunity to accomplish, in my mind, a couple of things. One was to change the view as you're coming in a little bit, and not have those trains sitting there all
well,
day.
you'll likely see less junk with Bartlett's use than you would with BN's, because the BN,
Yeah, you never knew
all
what
last
would be
week they
sitting
had
Yeah.
trains with broken railroad ties, and
Yep.
cars with broken ties and things.
And that's kind of our southern entrance into the Kansas City. We've talked about our western entrance a lot today, but
Bartlett tends to not have cars there unless they're loading trains. So,
Yeah, bring us, I'm fine with you guys having the discussion, maybe a little information about, what's their typical length of time that, they're storing before they get a line big enough to send out.
they have been, I don't know if inconvenience is the right word, but they have been impacted negatively by the rail consolidation, which benefits the city, but they're losing, with
They
the
got-
BN leaving, some of their, and the tracks being shortened, some of their capacity to build their larger unit trains.
Exchange, they could paint their.
that's true, but at the same time, I'd really want them to come up with, I'd like them to come up with the first, well, not hard numbers, but I'd rather than us value initially what it is, and they say, yep, I'd hate for us to underbid ourselves, like tie it up for a very long period of time, and they make a great deal. And if I were them, I'd be trying to do that, because who wouldn't? It's free country. But from our perspective, I don't want to tie it up too long or not get enough money for it.
Well-
So I think they should be the first to come up with some numbers. But if you're saying, should we talk with them? Yeah, I definitely,
The lease that we're inheriting from the BN
yeah, it's probably,
includes this property and the use of tracks 4 and 5,
yeah.
and it's $25,000 a year.
25,000 a year?
Right.
I'm gonna guess so, right next to the road for a lot of reasons, the improved real estate of access to the 12-lane eventually interstate, and it's our south door. That's gotta be worth something. It's probably more than 25, I'd say.
Well, one of the things that would probably be something, and I was just talking to Dick about it, that, the discussion I'd like to see entailed is maybe since part of my concern is that I was hoping we'd see a little more beautification of that area once those tracks were out. Maybe they could do something with their property to beautify it a little bit. You know, I'm not talking about a ton of money, but maybe, you know, the trees that had originally been put in there by Trees Forever, a lot of them didn't do well, and it's just kind of scraggly looking. You know, maybe there's something we can, they could work into their request that maybe would make their property look a little less run down, you know, maybe paint it, I don't know.
Would be great.
They're somewhat anticipating at some point along the line that lots 7 and 8 will be wanted, city will want those back, you know, on a maybe annual lease deal. We'll give notice that they have to have those discontinue use. And at that point, they'd be looking, they anticipate that they're going to have to put a fence in along track 6 on the, or west side of track 6
Okay.
when that occurs.
Okay.
And the more it'd look less like a, you know, a mid or low-level compound, incarcerated compound, and more like a fence befitting the south entrance to town. You know, what they're willing to do, I think, factors into the price.
Yeah.
You know, and the
That's what
length.
me.
And to me, but I'd like to hear from them initially. I don't want us to bid against ourselves.
Because track 6, pretty much for that lot, for their elevator to remain functional, they need that track 6.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Long term.
I imagine.
Because they have to build trains of 110 car length, they would be down to about the ability to only build 85 car lengths on through track 5. So they need 6 to make it so they can build the 110 car trains.
Okay.
And that makes sense, and you know what?
What's
Grain
the worst
elevators
choice?
are part of our,
It is.
you know, our history, it's part of the fabric of our community, so I don't want to, obviously, you know, I'd like to see them be able to continue. I just thought now would be a great time to have those discussions. If they're going to put a fence in, maybe, you know, part of the discussion can be, it could be something a little more appealing than barbed wire with chain, you know,
And
chain
just-
link with barbed wire or razor wire.
For additional background on that particular grain elevator, it puts out about 3 trains a week, I believe. And they're all trains heading to Mexico with corn from Iowa. And so that is the function of that grain elevator at this point.
That's important to know, but I think it's important that we realize, or remember, not, I'm sure we realize, but remember as a part of it too, that we want to encourage the free market in it, but at the same time, they have to pay the free market freight, I guess pun intended, of what it costs to do the business. We shouldn't give it away, is I guess what I'm saying.
Well, I
Because we
guess-
don't do it to anyone else.
One other point is they do own this parcel here adjacent to the waterworks that they indicated they might be, they acquired it for a potential barge facility, and they've given up on barge facility, so.
That might be some interesting discussion to have, particularly regarding the waterworks and their receptiveness to the West Broadway.
I've spoken to Doug Drummy about that parcel, and he would be interested in it if it could be had at a decent price.
I wonder if West Broadway could be, there's a lot of potential discussions that could be had as to what might incent the waterworks for the sake, you know what I mean? There are a lot of things there that could be a win-win for us, for the waterworks, for the city, and for the private businesses affected if we put our thinking hats on.
Okay, Vic and I will,
What are thinking hats on?
Not to say you don't have them on anyway.
As,
You can apply that.
as you guys continue in the discussions on this, and I welcome the perspective that you both provided about why they need this access and what it means for this business, so that if we have a better understanding about the economic impact of that whole operation upon the community, because in an effort to drive the correct bargain, I don't want to drive them too hard to the point that it makes less economic sense to stay here, so.
They have invested millions on that grain elevator system.
Yep.
Obtained it from, was it ConAgra that had it at one time? And so, yeah, they'd like to keep it viable for a long time.
Yep, so if we kind of understand the economics on both sides, I think that'll help bring us to a good decision point.
This is probably not legitimate transition, but I had, over time, have gotten several calls about Jake breaks. I think the biggest offenders are probably farmers driving grain trucks into town.
Well, and it's generally on hills, is where it's at.
Well, and actually, the one lady that called just a couple of weeks ago is down on 8th Street at that grain elevator on North 8th Street. And she works at night and sleeps during the day and says all day long they found the Jake brakes, which is just flat.
Yeah, that is odd, because
We don't have a no Jake brake ordinance. That,
on interstates and federal highways, we would have trouble trying to implement something like that, because they're seen as kind of a safety feature. And if what I've been told, that if the muffler system on the truck is working properly, you should not have that big Jake brake rumble when they're applied. And so, yeah, we can, on city streets, we can definitely get tighter on it. But
she actually was on North Broadway, which is completely flat, which,
that is unusual. That tells me that they're not properly mufflered either.
she said, I don't want to put my burden on you. She said, I went down to talk to the grain elevator and the guy laughed at me and told me to get out, so.
Well,
Well, and you know how that is, but. So she put her burden on me.
sounds like there are plenty of potential wins for everybody in this. Got to come to it.
All right, review agenda, anything on the consent agenda? Anything on the ordinances for second?
Unless there's concern by anyone else, I intend to move to waive third on both of those. They seem very routine. I don't see why nobody's objected.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
And the resolutions?
I just wanted to, on the concrete crushing operation, extension of their temporary use permit, I just want to know, have we gotten any complaints since we've allowed them to be down there? If anybody getting phone calls or complaints from the public?
Early on, when they first started operation, we had some complaints about dust and some tracking and other things, but not in probably 6 months have we had any complaints. It's really been going pretty smooth, so we don't, as far as right-of-way and stormwater permit and stuff like that, we don't have any concerns.
And it's just till end of October or something, did I remember that right, or?
Yeah, they
Thought it
could
was
say
90
that. The
days.
owner's here, so if
Yeah,
you want
if you
to
wanna-
come up,
yeah.
that would be great.
Brian Schaefer, 6502 North 32nd. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yeah, you just need to the end of October then to.
Yes,
to
and
finish
we've
up what
actually
you've
applied
got.
for a conditional permit, and we're working with Rose Brown to get all the information in as far as doing permanent, like concrete or asphalt for the entries and stuff like that.
On that one, just to be fair, I'll be straight up with you on it. It'll be a tough row to hoe for me to see agreeing to permanent. You'd have to give me some significant information about especially the long-term impact it may have in the surrounding area. I just think in fairness, I'll tell you that, but temporary, I don't have a problem.
Okay. And we intend to, whatever information's needed, we'll make sure, kind of like we did before. We
Yep,
we
you
came in
did.
with very little information, and I hope with the information we got to you guys was what you needed.
It was very satisfactory. Yes, thank you.
Anything else?
All my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the resolutions?
No.
Permits and cancellations, Tim is at the state police chief's conference, and he told us that he didn't have any concerns about any of them. One did have a violation, I don't know exactly which one it was, but he didn't feel it was a concern.
It seemed relatively minor. Yeah, I didn't have a concern.
I will be bringing up tonight under other business, a motion that deals with the questions that we had about the staff that is under city council, which would be Marcy and Dick, when it comes to their vacation sick pay and how it's going to work with Kronos. I mean, obviously, I would believe that the council is the only one that should be able to deny leave requests or whatever, because they are employed by the council. But as far as the administrative part of it, there's no way for me to know who has how much vacation time. Somebody has to administratively do that, and I don't know if any of us would have that comfort level with doing that administration of it. So I guess the motion I'm going to bring is that the only thing that would be done then by a city department on behalf of the council would be the administrative portion of it, not the actual authority to approve or deny leave times or.
I approve that. I agree to that. I think it makes sense that the buck stops with us on the actual substantive decision, but then how implementing it administratively or procedurally can be done by the existing apparatus in place to do that. But the actual decision should stay with the council.
We would never consider denying a vacation. The department heads organize their departments. They make sure they're staffed appropriately. If Dick or Marcy want to take time off, they just tell whoever conflicts with them that you can't have your time off. I'm taking my time off, so. I mean, that's up to them.
And I
They've
think,
always done a great job of letting us know, like, hey, I'm going to be gone,
yeah.
you know, that's going to be short for this. I mean, I think they've done a great job, so I don't have any, I think it's going well.
and I think the continued procedure is part of that, having it go through the mayor pro tem as our representative, really literally does, not literally, but figuratively bridges the legislative and the executive. I think that still makes sense to have it go through the mayor pro tem for the approving. In other words, I don't think we have to get together and vote whether we approve, a vacation request. I think I'm comfortable with whoever the mayor pro tem is making that call on our
Well,
behalf.
I don't even know that we're going to do that. I mean,
Yeah, I was going to say, honestly, up to this
Dick
point, we've
will
never
just-
approved or denied.
It's electronic. Dick will put on there, I'm going on vacation next week, and
Right.
But I agree, but ultimately, I suppose if we wanted to say no, I think it would be
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
mayor pro
yeah.
tem.
Right.
I mean, our procedures, we generally don't, but I think we retain that power to say that.
And that's all I just want to clear up, is that right now it sounds like that going to the Cronus system, some of the things that they would want to do, they don't have the authority to do because only we do. But honestly, we don't take care of some of those issues now as far as it comes to whether, somebody checking and seeing, oh, yeah, okay, Dick wants to go on vacation, which he really doesn't do very often and probably should more often. We're not going to be the ones that are going to, check with HR, say, well, how much vacation and has he used any? Or we need that to be tallied somewhere. So I'm fine with them doing it administratively. And
And since this is ministerial in nature, that's why it can be just brought on the agenda at this point without prior notice to the public. This is just housekeeping matters that the council needs to do for council business.
And I, as a Nebraska state employee, that is what,
you're going to say Nebraska fan.
and say, well,
you're getting me in trouble with both sides with that question. No, I'm not, but
Really
no.
declare your allegiance.
No, but we use, no, I am a Hawkeye fan, thank you, but we, I'll get me in trouble there, but oh well. We use Kronos in the whole state government, as far as I'm aware, certainly in the agency I work for, Department of Health and Human Services, but as much as I'll gripe about it, and I will, with certain aspects of it, it is a really good way of tracking the system. And one of the things I'd encourage is ours with time starts at 0, and it doesn't assume that I've worked however many hours I'm supposed to work. If I were hourly, I'm not, but it starts with 0 and I have to input. It doesn't assume I'm there if I'm not, and I just encourage us to go with that default of it doesn't assume I was there. I have to affirmatively say I was, so that if it's not true, in the rare case I hope that it's not true, someone is held responsible for saying something, they've worked hours they haven't, as opposed to, gosh, I just forgot to take that off. That just opens up a lot more, it keeps people more accountable, which I think is important.
I'd make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Second.
It's an appropriate topic for executive session, and that will be pursuant to 21.5 of the Iowa Code.
If I could, before we
Oh, I'm
vote,
sorry.
I just
Oh,
want some
forgive me.
clarification as to, for the purpose of the executive session. I know we discussed this a little bit in advance, that has to do with acquisition concerning West Broadway right-of-way. Is that correct?
Which particular property, sorry, which?
Does this have to do with right-of-way acquisition, or is this a different type of property acquisition?
That's right away on
Yeah.
our,
It's property acquisition for both West Broadway and Eastern Hills Beltway project.
Okay,
Both are on the agenda,
okay.
but wanted to talk about specific. Dick and I had a conversation about just the process and the public hearing and what particular properties. Want to have a conversation with the council about process moving forward with each one of those separate acquisitions.
Okay,
Okay.
got it, thank you.
White,
aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Ringenberg,
Aye.
Sandow,
Aye.
Watson.
Aye.
People gotta leave, right? There's also a little bit of-
They don't seem to be.
At Council Plus Savings Bank, you still get personalized customer service.
We have identity-safe checking with LifeLock, identity theft protection.
You get personal mortgage lending to fit your needs now and in the future.
You get business banking with the latest technology, because saving you time saves you money.
At Council Plus Savings Bank, you get people who answer when you call and local employees who are actively involved in our community. Council Plus Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.